My colleague you send me a video of my boss calling me a worthless dumbass at a staff party and telling everybody I would be replaced next month, after 20 years of being fully committed to the company. The next day at work I acted normal, but 1 month later, Ellen is such a worthless dumbass. Next month, we're getting rid of her. Mark my words. She has no clue it's coming. The voice in the video was unmistakable. Daniel Carter, my boss of 20 years. I stared at my phone screen, my fingers cold against the edges. The video, barely 30 seconds long, showed Daniel at the company's annual staff party, a whiskey glass in hand, standing in the middle of a laughing crowd. My co-workers, people I had worked alongside for decades, some of them chuckled, some shifted uncomfortably, but no one defended me. The video had been sent to me late last night by Liam, a junior analyst I had mentored since his first day. The message attached was short. I thought you should see this before Monday. A sharp, acidic feeling burned in my throat. After 20 years of unwavering commitment to Carter and Phillips Consulting, I was nothing more than a joke to them. I replayed the video, listening to Daniel's words over and over. She's so damn naive, thinks she's irreplaceable. Watch this. Next month, we'll have a fresh face in her seat, and she won't even see it coming. I had given this company everything. Long nights, missed birthdays, weekends spent polishing reports to make Daniel look good in front of clients. I had covered for his mistakes, smoothed over his public blunders, even defended him when others whispered about his incompetence. And in return, a betrayal so deep it left me breathless. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing between rage, humiliation, and something else, something colder, determination. At exactly 7:55 a.m., I walked into the office, same as always. My heartbeat was steady, my face composed. If Daniel thought I was naive, if he truly believed I would blindly walk into my own execution, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. The office buzzed with its usual Monday morning energy. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the smell of burnt coffee filling the air. Daniel's office door was wide open. He was leaned back in his chair laughing with Mark, the CFO. I paused in the doorway. Act normal. Morning, Daniel, I said with a polite smile. His eyes flicked to me, a hint of something in them. Hesitation? Guilt? No, arrogance. He grinned as if nothing had happened. Ellen, good weekend? I nodded. Great weekend. Feeling refreshed for another productive month. He smirked. That's what I like to hear. I bet it is. I turned and walked to my desk. And so the game began. Playing the long game for the next 4 weeks, I played the role of the perfect employee. I smiled in meetings. I offered solutions. I took on extra work. I stayed late, just like always. But beneath that, I was quietly collecting everything I needed. Emails, contracts, financial reports, things most people wouldn't think twice about. I thought twice about everything. And more importantly, I made sure someone else did too. I reached out to old clients, the ones who had stayed loyal to me, not Daniel. I dropped subtle hints about considering new opportunities and was met with immediate interest. I reached out to a corporate attorney, laying out the groundwork for something that would hit Daniel where it hurt the most, his wallet and his reputation. And most importantly, I reached out to a competitor, a firm that had been circling Carter and Phillips for months, looking for a way to poach their best talent. I wasn't just leaving, I was taking everything he took for granted with me. The morning of my final day, I arrived early. Daniel hadn't told me yet. He thought he'd catch me off guard, call me into his office with HR, give me some empty speech about restructuring and budget constraints. He had no idea I already knew. He had no idea I was 3 steps ahead. And by the end of the day, he would finally realize who the real fool was. I watched Daniel from across the office, a polite smile on my face, masking the storm brewing underneath. He was so confident, so sure of himself, laughing with Mark like nothing was coming. He thought he had won. But today, I wasn't just going to be fired. I was going to make sure this was the day everything started to fall apart for him. The day passed as usual. Emails, meetings, reports, as if everything was normal, but I felt it. That subtle shift in the air, people were watching me, whispers behind glass doors, quick glances when they thought I wasn't looking. I kept my posture relaxed, moving through the day as if I had no idea what was coming. If they expected tears, desperation, pleading, they were going to be deeply disappointed. At precisely 3 p.m., I saw Denise from HR walk into Daniel's office, her face carefully neutral. She didn't make eye contact with me. A few minutes later, my phone lit up. Daniel Carter, please come to my office at 3:30. There it was. I exhaled slowly, then stood, smoothing down my blouse. It was showtime. I knocked on the door, stepping inside with a polite smile. Denise sat across from Daniel, her company-issued folder neatly placed in front of her. Standard HR protocol. I had seen this play out before, just never as the one on the receiving end. Daniel put on his best fake sympathetic face. Ellen, please have a seat. I did. We appreciate your dedication to the company over the last 20 years, he began, his voice measured like he was reading from a script. But as you know, the industry is evolving, and we've had to make some difficult decisions regarding staffing. I nodded as if this were brand new information. We've decided to restructure your role, and, unfortunately, your position is being phased out, Daniel continued. We want to ensure a smooth transition, so we're offering you a generous severance package. Denise slid the folder across the table. I didn't touch it. I could see relief flash across Daniel's face. He had expected a reaction. He had expected anger, pleading, confusion. Instead, I just smiled. I understand, I said, my voice calm. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face. This was too easy for him. Too clean. He cleared his throat. We'll need your company laptop and access badge before the end of the day. And, of course, we ask that you sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding company operations. Of course, they wanted to make sure I left quietly. Still, I stayed quiet, watching, waiting. Then Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. I know this must be difficult, he said, pretending to care. But you're talented, Ellen. I'm sure you'll land on your feet. Oh, I know I will. I tilted my head slightly. Just to clarify, this decision is final? Daniel blinked, slightly caught off guard. Yes. Of course. Perfect, I said. I'll start wrapping up my work. Daniel nodded, clearly eager to get this over with. We appreciate your professionalism. I stood, picking up the folder and flashing them both a pleasant smile. And as I walked out of the office, I felt the weight of 20 years lift off my shoulders because now I was free to burn everything to the ground. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing exactly what they expected, packing up my things, smiling at coworkers, saying polite goodbyes, just another employee leaving. But behind the scenes, I was pulling the last strings of my plan. Before logging off for the final time, I archived every email, every project file, every client contract I had access to, all perfectly legal since I was still an employee until the end of the day. Then I sent one last email, not to Daniel, but to his biggest client, the one that made up 40% of our company's revenue. It was short. Professional. Hi, Richard. I wanted to thank you for your partnership over the years. Given my upcoming departure from Carter & Phillips, I wanted to let you know I'll be available for consulting in the near future. Would love to discuss how I can continue assisting your company. Let me know if you'd like to set up a call. I hit send. That email alone, more dangerous than any lawsuit. At exactly 5 p.m., I walked out of the building for the last time. I didn't look back because Daniel had no idea what was coming next. The morning after my departure, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. I checked the screen. Unknown number. I already knew who it was. Letting the call ring out, I leaned back against my pillows, a slow smile forming. Daniel was about to realize exactly how bad his mistake had been. I had expected at least a few days before the fallout started, but it seemed Daniel's arrogance had accelerated the process. By 10 a.m., I had 3 missed calls from Carter & Phillips, and by noon, a text from Liam. Liam, Ellen, whatever you did, the office is in full meltdown mode. Richard Miller just pulled out of his contract. Daniel is losing it. I laughed out loud. Richard Miller, the CEO of our biggest client, the one I had sent that polite little email to on my last day, had clearly seen the writing on the wall. No, Ellen. No stability. No reason to stay. Daniel had taken me for granted for 20 years. He thought I was replaceable. But the truth was I had been the glue holding everything together. And now that glue was gone. At 2:30 p.m., another call. This time, I answered. Hello? I said, my tone calm. A sharp exhale. Then, Ellen. Daniel's voice was tight, controlled. I just heard about Richard. He mentioned you reached out. I did, I said simply. A beat of silence. Daniel wasn't used to me being this unbothered. Listen, he continued, forcing a chuckle. I think there's been some miscommunication. Richard seemed to think you were leaving to work elsewhere. He got spooked. I'd love to clear things up. Ah, there it was. He wanted me to fix his mess. I leaned back in my chair, twirling my pen between my fingers. Daniel, I said, voice smooth. You told everyone I was a worthless dumbass who wouldn't see it coming. Why would you need me now? Silence. His breathing tightened. He knew exactly what I was referencing. Ellen, he started again. This time slower, more cautious. You know that was just office banter? I cut in, my voice dangerously light, a sharp inhale on his end. I don't hold grudges, Daniel, I continued. I just make smart decisions. Richard made one too. I heard him grit his teeth. Are you working for someone else? The desperation was starting to creep in now. He was trying to figure out what my next move was. I smiled. I don't see how that's relevant to you. A long silence. Then, "This isn't a smart play, Ellen," he warned. "We have a lot of mutual contacts in this industry." The threat. He was trying to intimidate me. He still thought he had the upper hand. And that was his biggest mistake. After hanging up, I didn't waste a second. I pulled out my notes and checked my list. Because Daniel was just the first step. Over the past 4 weeks, I had been in quiet discussions with his biggest competitors, the firms he secretly feared, the ones he laughed off in meetings but constantly tried to undercut in pricing. And one in particular had been very interested in what I had to offer. At 4 p.m., I walked into a sleek office downtown, greeted by a receptionist who already knew my name. 5 minutes later, I sat across from Nathan Pierce, CEO of Sterling & Company. "I'll be honest," Nathan said, leaning forward, eyes sharp. "The moment I heard you were leaving Carter & Phillips, I had my team watching. And after today's news, I think we both know Daniel's ship is sinking." I gave him a knowing smile. "And you want to take advantage of that?" He smirked. "I want to make sure we both win." I already knew the offer was coming, but I didn't just want a job. I wanted leverage. I pulled out the file I had prepared. "These," I said, sliding it across the table, "are projections based on my knowledge of Carter & Phillips clients, their upcoming renewals, and the weaknesses in their current contracts. If you want to take them down, this is where you start." Nathan flipped through the pages, his expression darkening with satisfaction. Then he looked up at me. "I assume you're not just giving this away for free." I smiled. "No. I'm not." His grin widened. "Let's talk terms." By the time I left the office, the deal was sealed. I wasn't just joining Sterling & Company. I was bringing Carter & Phillips clients with me. By next week, Daniel wouldn't just be losing contracts, he'd be bleeding out. And the best part? He still had no idea. Daniel was about to realize what true panic felt like. By Monday morning, the first wave hit. The moment Carter & Phillips opened their doors, their inboxes were flooded with termination notices. 3 major clients, ones I had personally managed for years, had decided to jump ship. Sterling & Company had moved fast, faster than Daniel could have anticipated. And I was watching it all unfold from the other side of the battlefield. At 8:15 a.m., Liam's text came through. "Holy shit, Ellen." Daniel just stormed into the main office. "He looks like he hasn't slept. I swear he's about to combust." I smirked. Good. Daniel had been so sure of himself, so convinced that I was just another disposable employee. But today, he was realizing that losing me wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a catastrophe. By 9 a.m., the cracks were turning into full-blown fractures. Mark, the CFO, had shut himself in his office, desperately crunching numbers to figure out how much damage had been done. Legal was scrambling to review contracts, trying to find a loophole that could keep the fleeing clients locked in. And Daniel was making calls to every executive contact he had, trying to convince them to stay. But it was already too late. The whispers were spreading. Clients were starting to realize just how unstable Carter & Phillips had become. And the worst part? Daniel had no idea who to blame. At noon, my phone rang. "Unknown number," I answered. "Ellen." Daniel's voice came through, strained and on edge. I leaned back in my chair. "Daniel, to what do I owe the pleasure?" He exhaled sharply. "I don't know what the hell you've been telling people, but we have a serious problem." I arched an eyebrow even though he couldn't see me. "Oh, what kind of problem?" "You know damn well what kind," he snapped. "Miller's gone. And now 3 other major accounts have pulled out. That's millions in revenue disappearing overnight. I need you to be straight with me." "Did you?" He stopped himself. He didn't want to say it. "Did I orchestrate this?" I let the silence drag just long enough for him to sweat. Then I said calmly and carefully, "I don't work for Carter & Phillips anymore, Daniel. What happens to your company isn't my concern." A beat of silence. Then, "You're working for Sterling, aren't you?" His voice had turned sharp. I smiled. "I don't see how that's relevant to you." Daniel cursed under his breath. "You're making a mistake, Ellen. This industry is small. You don't want to burn bridges." I let out a small laugh. "Daniel, you burned that bridge the moment you stood at that party and called me a worthless dumbass in front of the entire company." Silence. And then for the first time, I heard it in his voice. Fear. He knew this wasn't bad luck. This was me. I could almost picture him sitting at his desk, his power slipping through his fingers, realization settling in that he had severely underestimated me. And that was just the beginning. By 3 p.m., another update from Liam. Emergency board meeting just got called. The investors are freaking out. There's talk of replacing Daniel. I felt pure satisfaction roll through me because that had been part of my plan all along. Daniel had always managed to cover up his incompetence, hiding behind my work, my dedication. But now the ugly truth was out in the open. And in the corporate world? Nothing kills a CEO faster than uncertainty and lost revenue. The next morning, I made one final move. I walked into Carter and Phillips, not as an employee, but as a warning. The office was eerily quiet. The usual energy was gone, replaced with tension thick enough to cut with a knife. People looked at me as I walked through the hall, whispering behind their screens. They knew. They all knew. And then I reached Daniel's office. I knocked. "Come in," came the gruff response. I stepped inside. Daniel sat at his desk, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes, his usual arrogance gone. I closed the door behind me and took a seat across from him, mirroring the position we had been in just a week ago when he fired me. "How's it going, Daniel?" I asked lightly. His jaw clenched. "Cut the crap, Ellen. What do you want?" I tilted my head. "Me? I just wanted to see how you were doing." He let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, you know how I'm doing." I smiled. I did. He took a deep breath. "Look. If there's a way to fix this, to make this right, what would it take?" There it was. The desperation. The surrender. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice soft but firm. "There's no fixing this, Daniel." His expression hardened. "You think you've won?" I stood, smoothing down my blazer. "I don't think I've won. I know I have." And then before walking out of his office for the last time, I turned back and said the final words he never expected to hear. "Enjoy unemployment, Daniel." And with that, I walked away, leaving him in the ruins of the empire he once thought was untouchable. Daniel thought he could contain the damage. He thought a few phone calls, a little damage control, maybe even a few empty promises would be enough to stop the bleeding. But by the end of the week, Carter and Phillips wasn't just bleeding. It was hemorrhaging. And now the world was watching it happen in real time. On Friday morning, the headlines hit. Major client exodus at Carter and Phillips, CEO under fire, Sterling & Co. acquires key clients in strategic move. Is this the end for C&P? Executive shakeup imminent. Investors lose faith in Daniel Carter's leadership. Every business journal, corporate blog, and financial analyst was covering it. And I was sitting in my brand new office at Sterling & Company, sipping my coffee, watching the empire that Daniel built on arrogance and my hard work crumble into dust. At 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Liam, you are not going to believe this. Emergency investor meeting. Rumor is they're forcing Daniel out." I leaned back in my chair, smiling to myself. Right on schedule. At 1 p.m., the board called an emergency meeting. Every senior executive, every major investor, and, of course, Daniel. For the past week, he had been spiraling, trying and failing to put out the fires, but now the board was done listening to excuses. "Gentlemen," Daniel started, forcing his usual smirk. "I know things look unstable right now, but I have a plan." "Daniel," one of the senior board members interrupted. "We've already spoken with the top investors. This isn't up for debate." The smirk vanished. "We're losing clients. Our stock has dropped 23%, and Sterling & Company has completely outmaneuvered us. Do you even realize the damage that's been done?" Daniel's face darkened. "You think this is my fault?" A sharp laugh from the other end of the table. "You fired the person who was holding this company together," another board member said pointedly. "And now she's using everything she built here to destroy you." Daniel's hands tightened into fists. He knew. He knew exactly who had done this to him. And worse, there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. At 3 p.m., an internal email went out. "Effective immediately, Daniel Carter has stepped down as CEO of Carter & Phillips Consulting. An interim leadership team will be announced in the coming weeks." I read it twice just to let the moment sink in. Daniel Carter, outside fired, publicly humiliated. Everything he had spent years building, gone. And yet, it still wasn't enough. At 5:30 p.m., I received an email from Daniel Carter. Subject: "Let's talk." Oh, this was going to be good. I opened it. "Ellen, I think we both know things have gotten out of control. I won't pretend we've always seen eye to eye, but we worked together for a long time. I know you're behind this, and I think it's time we put this behind us. Let's meet." Desperate, predictable, pathetic. I clicked reply, and I typed, "Daniel, there's nothing to discuss. I already told you this isn't fixable. Enjoy your weekend." Then I hit send. And just like that, I closed the last chapter of Daniel Carter's career, but my story was only just beginning. The storm had passed. Daniel Carter was finished. His empire had crumbled. His reputation was in ruins. And Carter and Phillips, a sinking ship, flailing to survive. But me? I was just getting started. On Monday morning, I stepped into Sterling & Company's headquarters as their newest senior partner, a position I had earned, not because of office politics or because I had played nice with the right people, but because I was the best at what I did. Nathan, the CEO, greeted me in the executive lounge with a firm handshake. "Welcome aboard, Ellen," he said. "From what I hear, you've already made quite an impact." I smiled. "I like to be efficient." He chuckled. "Well, You're exactly what we need. The clients you brought in, they trust you. And more importantly, they're ready to grow. I nodded, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: excitement, possibility, control. This wasn't just a job. This was a fresh start. I should have known Daniel wouldn't disappear quietly. Because later that afternoon, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Ellen," she said, hesitating. "You have a visitor." I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She looked uncomfortable. "Daniel Carter." I stared at her for a second, then let out a slow breath. "Send him in." A few moments later, Daniel walked in. Or rather, what was left of him. His expensive suits, his cocky smirk, his air of untouchability, gone. His eyes were tired, his face was drawn, and for the first time in his life, he looked small. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. He didn't sit. He didn't speak. Not right away. Finally, he let out a humorless chuckle. "You really did it." I tilted my head. "Did what?" His jaw clenched. "You destroyed me." I didn't correct him because he wasn't wrong. Instead, I simply said, "You destroyed yourself, Daniel." He exhaled sharply. "I underestimated you." I nodded. "Yes, you did." A long silence stretched between us. Then he said the last thing I ever expected. "I need a job." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I just stared at him. Daniel Carter, the man who had mocked me, humiliated me, called me a worthless dumbass to an entire room of people. And now, he was standing in front of me begging. It was poetic. Perfect. I could have crushed him in that moment. I could have humiliated him, dragged him through the mud, made him feel just a fraction of what I had felt. But instead, I just stood, walked over to him, and met his defeated gaze. "No, Daniel," I said, my voice calm. "You don't need a job. You need a lesson." His eyes darkened, but he said nothing. I smiled. Cold, knowing. "Good luck, Daniel." Then I turned, walked back to my desk. And just like that, I dismissed him for good. That night, I sat in my new office staring out at the city skyline. Everything felt different now. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't just someone else's employee. I was the one in control. I thought back to that humiliating night, the video, the laughter, the betrayal. And now,